and then saying that he was thinking about the Russia probe when he was making the decision. Have we crossed a line here?
Well, I will just say that the developments of the past week, very bothersome, very disturbing to me. I think in many ways our institutions are under assault, both externally, and that's the big news here, is the Russian interference in our election system. And I think as well our institutions are under assault internally.
Internally from the president?
Exactly.
Because he's firing the checks and balances.
Well, I think, you know, the founding fathers, in their genius, created a system of three co-equal branches of government and a built-in system of checks and balances. And I feel as though that's under assault and is eroding.
General, on Friday you said that Director Comey told you he was uncomfortable about going to this private dinner that he went to with the president shortly after the inauguration. Did he talk to you at all about the content of their conversation? And the reason I ask is because a source close to Comey told me about the dinner, about President Trump asking Comey for a pledge of personal loyalty, and Comey said no.
No, my only knowledge of this was before the dinner. I was at the Hoover Building on the 27th of January for another event and spoke briefly with Director Comey. He mentioned to me the invitation he had from the president for dinner, and that he was, my characterization, uneasy with it, both from the standpoint of the optic of compromising his independence and the independence of the FBI. But I don't know, he's not debriefed me or spoken to me about what went on during the dinner.
What's been the impact in the intelligence community of the firing of James Comey? Well,
I think at large there is concern about it. I do know that it came as a great shock to, and was very disturbing to FBI employees. I spoke to one last night at a dinner that was quite upset about it. And I think that reflects the feeling, widespread feeling in the FBI. I'm fairly familiar with the Bureau. I've worked with it for a long time, and I have a relationship with the Bureau through our domestic DNI reps and through the overseas legal attaches. And I'm pretty familiar with the Bureau and its people. It's a national treasure. And it's very disturbing to me that the negative morale impact this event has had. I mean, people had issues, I'm sure, with Director Comey's, some of his decisions. That's fine. People took issue with decisions I made. That's part of the deal. But I think as far as his stature as a leader and his integrity, people are very upset about the way he was treated.
All right, let's get a wider view now of those comments with my panel now. Jay Newton-Small is a contributor for Time Magazine. Presidential historian Alan Lichtman is a distinguished history professor at American University. And CNN intelligence and security analyst Robert Baer is a former CIA operative. Good to see all of you this Sunday. All right, so Bob, you first, you heard Clapper there, who said, he's very worried about the climate. It's very troublesome, not because of Comey's reputation necessarily, but mostly because of the way in which he was fired. So, during this election process now, is it your view that, Trump still has a real big credibility problem within the intelligence community? You hear it from Clapper, and, and you've heard it from, a few others. So is it going to be tougher to get a good candidate who says, yes, I'm up for the job, as opposed to it being difficult for them to find a good candidate?
Well, Fred, I think it's the way he was fired was a humiliation for the FBI. The FBI has been under attack basically for the last couple of years. There were a lot of ways that he could have fired Comey. He simply could have called him to the Oval Office, said we got to part ways. You could have prepared Comey for it, all sorts of ways. It looks like the White House, of course, there's complete dysfunction there. And General Clapper is right. There is an assault on American institutions, and President Trump is just adding to that perception. And I think it would be very difficult to get an FBI director who's not had that in mind, that, look, I could be the next one to go if I displease him. And I agree with Lindsey Graham, what we need is an FBI agent good standing, independent to head that agency. And if we put a politician as head of the FBI, that's going to be an added disaster.
So you worry that a candidate will consider the way in which James Comey was fired and may be less apt to take the job because of either the perception that it may be political or the potential treatment of not being a neutral force, but instead a political decision?
Oh, absolutely. I think that the FBI is becoming politicized with this firing of Comey. And anybody coming in, heading the Russian investigation, has got to wonder, am I going to be the next one fired if I state what I believe are the facts? And a lot of times in bureaucracies, I spent 21 years in the CIA, worked closely with the FBI. Government officials prefer to stay out of the limelight, and they do not want to be in a political maelstrom in Washington. And they'll just simply take other jobs. And I think that's very unfortunate.
And Jay, Attorney General, Jeff Sessions said he had recused himself. We know he had recused himself from all things investigations as it relates to Russia. But now here he is, part of the panel interviewing candidates. This is a big problem, isn't it?
Absolutely, Fred. It's it's when you treat people like this, with abruptly firing them, sort of ridiculing them on national television, not just for the FBI Director Comey, but also for your own staff. I mean, his spokespeople have gone out over the past week, presented all kinds of essentially false information on the reasons behind the firing. First, saying it had to do with Comey's treatment of Hillary Clinton during the campaign, and then the president himself saying, well, actually, no, that had nothing to do with it. Word is on the Hill that they've been trying to recruit more communication staff, and nobody wants to go work for the president because that's such a tough job, because they're treated so terribly and they're left out to dry and they're left out to hang out there. And so the question, they haven't filled enormous amounts of positions in terms of political appointees, and now it's going to become increasingly challenging for them to fill those positions, as nobody really wants to work for this president.
So Alan, a new NBC News poll says just 29% of Americans approve of Trump's firing of James Comey. Lindsey Graham, as we've made reference to him, says the next director needs to be an FBI agent. There need not be politics that will impact the decision of who is selected. Is that even possible, particularly based on the pattern of behavior of this White House, and that Trump himself and everyone around him has talked about the importance of loyalty?
No, it's not possible. And the real headline from that Clapper interview was his fear that the President of the United States is undermining our democratic institutions to serve his own political purposes. As I point out in my book, The Case for Impeachment, the founding fathers, and they were fathers in those days, happy Mother's Day to everyone, did put into the Constitution checks and balances, but they fully recognized that a rogue president could smash through those checks and balances. That's why they also put in impeachment as an orderly, constitutional, and peaceful process for safeguarding our democracy. So what we need now is not a special prosecutor. That person would serve at the pleasure of Trump. We need an impeachment investigation by the House of Representatives Judiciary Committee. That's what happened after the Saturday Night Massacre when Richard Nixon fired Archibald Cox.
And do you think all the components are in place right now for the House to be able to initiate that process?
Absolutely. Remember, in the Watergate case, they had 44 lawyers working. They had 100 staffers. So the committee could really staff up and do a completely thorough investigation in a matter of months. Special prosecutors take years. And here's what I have to say to Donald Trump. Mr. President, if what you say is true, that there was absolutely no involvement between you and your team with the Russians, why not totally clear the air? Welcome an investigation. Encourage every one of your team members to testify under oath, release all documents, release the tapes if they exist. But so far, you've been engaged in a Nixon-style cover-up. Not just the firing of Comey, but, for example, what seems to be White House collusion with Representative Nunes to derail the House investigation, or demanding personal loyalty from Mr. Comey, or your Attorney General lying about his contacts with the Russians. Get off the cover-up if there's nothing to hide. prove it to us, and the only way to do it is through an impeachment investigation. That is the proper constitutional venue, and our framers understood that.
Wow. Well, speaking on the issue of the Russia investigation was the Secretary of State Rex Tillerson this morning. Take a listen.
Your counterpart, the Russian Foreign Minister, Mr. Lavrov, said that you guys didn't even talk about this issue of Russian interference in our election because, as he put it, the President Trump himself says it's fake news, so it's not an issue. Why haven't you brought it up with them?
Well, Chuck, I think we have such a broad range of important issues that have to be addressed in the U.S.-Russia relationship. Obviously, the interference in the election is one of those. I think it's been well documented. It's pretty well understood, the nature of that interference here and elsewhere. And, you know, these are not new tactics on the part of the Russian government, directed not only at us but at others. But again, I think we have to look at this relationship in its broadest contours, and there are many, many important areas which require our attention if we are to bring it back to a relationship that we believe is necessary for the security of the U.S.
So, Alan, do you buy that? How could it not be discussed?
To quote a great Republican, Ronald Reagan, there you go again. A absolute Nixon-style deflection. If you listen to that, he never really answered the question. He deflected to other things. And let me put this to Mr. Tillerson and President Trump and all his supporters. What could be more important than a foreign hostile power, Russia, meddling in our democracy to undermine our democratic institutions and the integrity of our elections? And if we don't get to the bottom of this, they're going to do it again, and they're going to do it all over the world, and our democracy will never be the same again. Shame on you, Mr. Tillerson. Answer the question.
And real quick, Bob, you're shaking your head. You have a point you want to make on that real quick?
I agree with everything Alan said. It's time to move to impeachment. We have to get to the bottom of this Russian meddling in our election. Otherwise, we don't have a democracy. We have to hold this country, Department of Justice, the White House, to standards we've lived by since our independence. There is no choice, and if it's impeachment, let's go there.
And real quick, Jay, can that happen without Republicans being more outspoken?
It absolutely cannot happen without Republicans being more outspoken, Fred. I mean, the House is controlled by Republicans. The Senate is controlled by Republicans thus far. Republicans have actually supported Donald Trump in this firing of Comey and in everything he's done so far.
All right, we're going to have to
One
leave it
final
right there.
word.
Okay.
I call upon every Republican to do what so many did in the Watergate investigation, put patriotism above party.
All right, thanks so much. Appreciate it.